Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome to Policy and Rights, the show about government policy and human rights. Welcome back to Policy and Rights here on Depictions Media Radio, and an article written on many countries who are failing to investigate cases of torture. UN expert Dr. Alice J. Edwards, and she is quoted by saying, despite the impressive growth of in the International Criminal Court and Tribunal, our collective commitment to those entities, their capacity to deal with the scale and scope of torture crimes being perpetrated today will never be enough. And she also urges authorities to take ownership of justice processes and pursue justice at home for the crimes of torture. There's a report that highlights the main obstacle in hindering full and prompt investigations into allegations of torture, including institutional, regulatory, political, and practical challenges. It also is noted promising state practices to encourage the investigation of torture allegations, including documenting that at least 105 countries have adopted an explicit criminal offense of torture. In many cases, torture is considered to be a war crime, and to use torture does violate many international human rights. And of course, our expert Dr. Alice Edwards is urging countries to continue to investigate torture and to eliminate it from their countries. Our country is going too far with counterterrorism measures. I mean, we have many surveillance things going on, including drones, biometrics, artificial intelligence, spyware, which is being ramped up in an ongoing fight against terrorism without due regard for the rule of law and governance of human rights. That is a quote from Fionnuala Ní Aoláin, and she is warning about the use of these things, and is it eventually going to start violating people's human rights? Are we being monitored too closely? I do have this to say about it, because I hear this from many people saying, well, I have nothing to hide. It's not about having nothing to hide. It is about the intrusion of governments looking too closely into our private lives. It's like, it's one thing if there is enough evidence to support something and there's an ongoing investigation into a person. It's another thing just to blanketly scope into the private lives of the average citizen who is probably innocent of things like terrorism. And one last update before we play the press conference update from New York with the United Nations, and it has to do with global warming or climate change, as it is the more popular term. And this comes from the Secretary General. Though our world is at a crossroads, our planet is in the crosshairs. We are nearing the point of no return, of overshooting the internationally agreed 1.5 degrees Celsius in global warming. We are at the tip of the tipping point. The panel of UN body for assessing the science related to climate change has put forward for decades clear evidence of how people and planet are being affected by climate destruction. It is a new assessment will be the first comprehensive report since the Paris Agreement on climate change adopted in 2015. You have built the case setting out the science of climate change and the urgency for climate action. Is stated by the Secretary General. This evidence has been clear, convincing, and irrefutable. Well, there's a lot going on with, of course, with climate change. We've reported on this several times that there are trying to create a new industry that is going to curb it, trying to invoke new taxes, as Justin Trudeau has pointed out that carbon taxes are the way to go. Tax the polluters to make them fall into compliance. That doesn't exactly work either. There are a lot of things going on with climate change, and a lot of them has to do with some unknown factors with our planet, and that we need to stop trying to adjust our climate to meet our needs, instead adjust our lives to meet our climate. Some of this means that maybe we do need to cut back on some of that corporate consumerism. Maybe we do need to be a little more moderate about the things that we do. Think a little more about what it is that we do in our daily lives, so that we, the people, start to curb climate change and not just simply leave it up to our government regulations, the corporations to come up with whatever the industrial fix will be. We, the people, need to find a way ourselves rather than leaving it out of our hands. It is totally within our grasp, as we now have 8 billion people on our planet, that we can come up with a way to curb climate change and live in harmony with planet Earth. Okay, with that being said, we're going to move forward into the press conference from New York City in the press arena at the United Nations, where they're going to talk about several different things, and including the Black Sea Grain Initiative, Ukraine. When we get back to climate change again, things like that, like war, it adds to that pollution and that climate action that we need. They're also going to be talking about Lebanon, Syria and Turkey, they're still cleaning up from the earthquake, still trying to rescue people, and humanitarian organizations are providing aid to more than 310,000 people in February and over 140,000 people so far in March. In the primary impact of the earthquake. So also they're going to be talking about Colombia, Cyprus, and tropical cyclone Freddie as it whips around South Africa, and other topics like child detention and a senior personnel appointment the Secretary General has made. So let's move forward and listen to what was in the press conference from the United Nations.
For dedicated years of service, Mr. Aldari has served as chief economist with the UN Economic and Social Commission of Western Asia, and he was also ESCWA's deputy executive secretary, and I believe he presently serves in Afghanistan as the resident the UNDP representative, if I'm not mistaken. A important call for all of you who may be interested. Nominations are now open for the 2023 UN Human Rights Prize. The award recognizes individuals and organizations for outstanding achievements in human rights. The prize was established by the UN General Assembly in '66 and is awarded every 5 years. Nominations are accepted until April 15th, and this year's award ceremony will take place here at UN headquarters in December. More information online if you want to nominate yourself or someone you know. I'm not looking at you, James. Tomorrow, our guest, we'll have a number of guests pegged to water. Lotta Tatinen, Chief of the Division of Sustainable Development Goals at the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs. She will be joined by Henk Ovink, Special Envoy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands for Water, and Sultan Ramizoda, Special Envoy of the President of Tajikistan for Water. They are here to brief you on the forthcoming UN Water Conference, which takes place next week from the 22nd to the 24th. Benno, hold your horses. And I will end with some more good news. We're up to 70 fully paid up member states. We thank our friends in Romania, Indonesia, and Timor-Leste. What do those three countries have in common? And Romania. I have no clue. Exactly. They've all paid their dues. Go ahead, Benno.
Thank you. On the grain initiative, if I were to interpret your words in the way that the UN would rather go with 60 more days than risking the Russian withdrawal, would you feel understood?
Would I feel understood? I hope I always feel understood. I think our focus right now is on doing everything possible to ensure the continuity of that initiative. James.
So same subject then. That's your focus. What is actually happening? Are there active talks going on? I mean, are there people in the same, they were all in Geneva in the same place. Are they still convened in talks as we speak?
There's no, the meeting we had with the Russian Federation, led by Deputy Foreign Minister Vershinin, is over. That being said, we remain in constant contacts. The Secretary General has been in touch with officials from Turkey, from Ukraine, so is Rebecca Greenspan and Martin Griffiths. So contacts are continuing.
But my understanding is that the grain deal continues and renews automatically if no one objects. Is your understanding from the parties that they are liable to object or not at this stage?
The grain deal, as of now, continues. Madame, and then.
Two questions about Africa, of course. in the DRC, 4 civilians were killed Saturday by the Rwandan army and the M23 in North Kivu. Of course, the government is accusing the UN doing nothing. What does the UN say about it? This is my first question. Do you?
Question?
Yes. It's about Djibouti, where the vice president of the International Federation of Human Rights has been expelled. And the day before, it was the program officer for Africa who was expelled too. So you're talking about human rights, but you see, even in a country where military bases of the world major powers are there, nothing is respected. So what the UN is saying about that?
I've not seen those reports, but I will look into it and get back to you. On the issue of what is going on in the Eastern DRC, this is something we have been talking about, concerned about, and doing quite a lot about. Our mission on the ground is doing its best to protect civilians. There's at least one base I know that is basically surrounded by the M23, where we're protecting civilians. We are enforcing and applying our mandate to the best of our ability, to the best of our capacity. What has been clear is that the different parties involved in this conflict have had agreements, whether those agreements were reached at mini summits in Luanda, or in Nairobi and other places. Those things need to be respected, right? The parties in this conflict need to respect their agreements. And first and foremost, civilians need to be respected in their right to live. Right? People are living in extremely dangerous circumstances. There's already a humongous humanitarian crisis. Over 800,000 people were displaced, if I'm not mistaken, in the last year, all because men with guns, and I would assume they're mostly men, are continuing fighting and killing and abusing civilians in the worst possible way. So it's very important that all the parties involved, whether they be countries or movements, live up to the commitments they've made. Deji, and then we will go to our visitor.
Okay, so first a quick follow-up on the Black Sea Green Initiative. As you said, you first want to ensure the continuity of this deal, but you remind us several times this deal was signed by Turkey, Russian Federation, Ukraine, and the UN as a witness there in last July. If the UN wants to change the phase from 120 days to 60 days, will everybody on board agree on that change of the terms?
We are a witness to this agreement. I think no one is talking about the UN trying to change the agreement in any way. We're just trying to make sure that things continue to flow.
So
right?
if
I fully understand and appreciate your need for granular clarity from me. What you will get from me is just what I've said, is that we're doing everything to ensure the continuity of this accord, and as far as we're concerned, the accord and the initiative is going on, and at the same time, we continue to push very hard on the full implementation of the MOU on the export of Russian grain and fertilizer.
No, so what actually I want to confirm is that if this change to 60 days, you have to get everybody's agreement on that.
I'm not going to get into.
But that's what you said. It's like signed agreements, right?
The agreement has been the agreement was signed by the three parties, witnessed by the Secretary General. It is a public.
So it's a change of term if it's 60 days.
We are. I'm happy to read what I've said. what I've said already, but I'm not going to go into further detail.
Okay, and another subject. On the humanitarian assistance in Syria, last week I believe Farhan said that there are several monitoring steps to ensure that all humanitarian assistance were used in humanitarian front for those people who need this. So far, has the UN received any reports from any steps of those monitoring that these assistance has been misused or being hoarding by someone?
In Syria?
Yeah.
No, I'm not aware of us having received any such reports.
Okay, so I have a couple of other questions. Maybe
I'll come back to you if you don't mind. Errol.
James, did you have a follow-up on that subject?
No, please, let me be the, you can ask whatever you want, but let me,
Because
I
I
have a
have-
limited amount of authority around
Because I
here.
have something on the totally
No, you could, 'cause
different
you could talk, you could
subject.
talk amongst yourselves otherwise, but go ahead, Errol.
Thank you very much indeed. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Dujarric. So my question is certainly on Bosnia again. Since the very beginning of the year, the smaller Bosnian entity, Republika Srpska and their leadership are preparing set of laws which are interfering with the freedom of the speech, media, etc., anti-defamation law, also scrutinizing of the NGO organizations. And already many organizations like the Freedom of the Press from Bosnia and Europe reacted. I wonder now whether the Secretary General and you have to say something beyond declarative statement, which is always good in wording, but a little bit less in action.
I would refer to first what our human rights colleagues have said, which has been pretty clear. We don't tend to comment on draft legislation, but I will, in this context, I will reaffirm what we have said in a number of occasions in different contexts, but these are principles that should apply universally, which is we stand against the criminalization of defamation, right? And it is also important to ensure that civil society has space within any nation to operate and to bring very important ideas and discussions within the body politic. Civil society has a critical role to play, and we're always concerned about restricting the space for civil society.
Any specific on Bosnia or Balkans?
No, I'm saying that our human rights colleagues have spoken out on Bosnia and on Bosnia and Herzegovina. It is the remit of the Office of the High Commissioner to do that. We fully stand by them. You're asking me about the Secretary General's position. Our usual position is that we don't like to comment on things that are being discussed within legislatures. But I just reaffirmed what our principles are. Dawn, and then we'll go to the second round.
Thanks. I have a question on Syria. Yesterday at a press briefing, Lynn Welchman of the Commission of Inquiry on Syria mentioned the tentative scheduling of a debate in the General Assembly for March 28th for the creation of this special mechanism to determine the fate of displaced and disappeared Syrians. It's an initiative that's been pushed by the Syrian families. And in her remarks, she mentioned that the debate, if it happens, would either be attended by the Secretary General or the High Commissioner for Human Rights. The Syrian families who are driving this initiative have made it clear that they want the Secretary General at this debate. I know that the Secretary General has released at least 2 statements supporting the creation of the mechanism, so I'm wondering if is the Secretary General been approached about this debate on the 28th?
I literally need to check his calendar. I will get back to you on that. But you are correct saying that the issue of missing persons and disappeared is one that he's highlighted a number of times, and one that he has raised directly and that his envoy has raised directly with the Syrian authorities.
Do you know if he would agree to
Let me see
debate?
what the situation is, and then I will let you know. Let's go around to Benno.
Thank you. I would like to go back to the Grand Deal. and about the time frames of 120 and 60 days. I think, I would guess that the United Nations picked 120 days for a reason, to make the MOU operational. If that time frame would be reduced for whatever reason, what kind of problems, operational problems or challenges could that bring?
This is not, this is not something we picked, right? This is the result of discussions. What is important is the continuity. I don't want to be dragged into the details of where we are right now. Our position is that it is important that this continues. Deji. No, Deji, you go.
Okay, all right, okay, because I got a bunch of questions.
But that's okay.
But basically on the same,
exactly, as opposed to James, who has
okay,
none. Yeah,
but yeah, basically it's on the same topic, which is AUKUS. Yesterday, UK, Australia, and US leadership had a meeting on AUKUS, and later, I think today, Mr. Grossi of IAEA published a statement on the transfer of the technology of nuclear submarine. In the statement, he said all the parties have obligations which needs to be implemented in accordance with their prospective safeguards agreement and additional protocols with the IAEA. The legal obligation of the parties and non-proliferation aspects are paramount, and the process involves serious legal and complex technical matters. Just want to know, from the Secretary General, if there are many, given the complexity, that's what he said, if there are any legal or technical matters, should the time frame for the delivery of the nuclear submarine be changed accordingly to what IAEA suggests?
You're right. These are a lot of technical and legal issues. From our standpoint, it is very important that the AUKUS partners continue their dialogue with the IAEA, which is in the lead on this issue for the UN system. So we fully back the IAEA. It's up to the IAEA to decide on a time frame. We're not going to, that's not for us to opine on.
Do you think this would set a precedent for other member states to transfer also nuclear technologies, for example, for other?
I can't speak. I can't speak to that. But it is important that appropriate safeguards be taken in terms of safeguarding the issue regarding nuclear propulsion technology and fuel. There needs to be safeguards that are really top-notch put in place.
Many experts believe, because you talk about the legal aspects, many experts believe there is a loophole in the safeguard, the non-application of safeguards to nuclear material to be used in non-peaceful activity.
I will let the IAEA speak on technical issues.
Okay, so let me just walk back to the purpose of the whole AUKUS thing. Yesterday, Prime Minister of the UK, Mr. Sunak, when accepting interviews with both BBC and NBC, he said, and I quote, "China represents the biggest state threat to our economic interests, for sure, and it's a systematic challenge for the world order." And okay, that's for the NBC, and for BBC, he said, "China is a country with fundamental different values to ours, and it represents a challenge to the world order. Seems China is always the challenge to the world order." As the most important governmental institution, does the UN think China is a threat to the world order?
Our position, and I think Secretary General's raised it, and he's expressed his concern about growing global tensions, growing the danger and the negative impact that would have of decoupling between China and the U.S. and its allies. We are always there to promote open dialogue and diplomacy and anything to lower tensions. I'm going to go to the screen to Pam, and then Madame, and then James. Pam?
Yes, hi, Steph. Question is, I'm getting feedback, are you?
Nope.
No. Okay. The question is about the grain deal again. Clearly, it's going down to the wire. Has the Secretary General reached out to the intermediaries that he has spoken with, or the President of Russia himself, to discuss the 6-month versus 120-day offer? Deadline. Extension. And is there any concern that the Turkish elections take place right around the 60 days, which would make it difficult to keep Turkey in the talks? Thank you.
On your second part, I have no doubt and in full confidence that Turkey can actually handle presidential elections and continue its pivotal role in the Black Sea Grain Initiative at the same time. So that's not an issue for us. As I mentioned earlier in the briefing, the Secretary General has been in touch, and his teams have been in touch with Russian officials, with officials from Turkey, and with Ukrainian officials, and those contacts are continue. Phone lines are always busy. Celia.
But I'm sorry, as a follow-up, just has the SG reached out, and doesn't the MOU say it has to, the renewal would be for 120 days and therefore a 60-day offer is non-conforming?
I'm not going to pretend to be a lawyer today. I've said what I've said. Our focus is on the continuity of this deal. And
Thank you.
Okay. Celia.
Steph, I believe that the Prime Minister of Mali is coming here at the UN on March 22nd.
Mm-hmm.
I also believe he's not going to meet with the Secretary General. But do you know why he's coming to the UN?
I will not pretend to be a lawyer today, and I will not pretend to be a spokesman for Mali either. James, let's...
Sorry, I am coming back to the grain deal.
Yeah.
So first, who has the Secretary General spoken to? You said the Secretary General himself has been picking up the phone.
Mm-hmm.
We know that he went to see the President of Ukraine. Has he spoken to the President of Russia or the Foreign Minister of Russia?
He's not spoken to the President of Russia. He's been, Mr. Vershinin was in touch with met with Rebecca Greenspan and Martin Griffiths. I think Secretary General was also in communications with Mr. Vershinin, who clearly on this issue right now speaks for the government of the Russian Federation.
Okay, and you don't want to give real-time information about what's going on in the talks. Sadly, Russia is giving real-time information in the last few minutes. The TASS news agency reporting Russia has notified the United Nations it has no objection to extending the grain deal by 60 days instead of 120. Russia has not yet received official reaction from all participants of the deal. So it sounds like Russia is expecting you, Turkey, and Ukraine to say yes or no to the 60 days. Is that where things stand?
Where things stand is that I've expressed our position. You would have to ask the Turkish and the Ukrainian authorities for theirs.
Okay, and again on TASS news agency, Russia opposes expansion of the grain deal until Russian agricultural exports are unblocked. Moscow expects not just assurances but concrete steps from the United Nations. Have you got a new concrete plan that can solve their concerns on this?
As we've said, Rebecca, the Secretary General, and others have been working extremely hard to remove impediments to the export of Russian food and fertilizer as outlined in the MOU, whether it's in context with the European Union, with the United States, with the UK, with private sectors. I mean, the Secretary General has had conversation with private sector actors on this, whether it's on the Chamber of Commerce, banks, and others. We are working to make sure that all the lights are green, but we're not the ones who have hands on the switch to turn those lights green.
So in the end, you can't offer Russia what it wants.
Well, we are doing our bit, which is working diligently, and we will continue to work diligently in an unabated manner to clear the path for the free flow of Russian grain and fertilizer. But that also calls on others to remove the impediments.
I'll move off the grain deal, but I've got a couple more if you don't mind, following up on things that you've said. First, USG DiCarlo gone to Cyprus. Is there a particular window of opportunity? Are things looking more hopeful with the diplomacy? Is there a reason for this timing?
There is a new leadership on the Greek Cypriot side, so this was an opportune moment to go.
And finally, picking up on something else that you said, when you were talking about DRC and MONUSCO, you talked about a surrounded base.
Yeah.
Can you give us some more details?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I think that I may have spoken about that quite a bit during your prolonged absence.
Okay.
But I will give you more details.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's go to Ria Novosti.
Thank you, Stefan. I have a follow-up on James' questions regarding the grain deal. Deputy Foreign Minister Vershinin, while explaining why 60 days, he said that Russia is advocating for 60 days because it believes that this term is sufficient for removing these bottlenecks, for removing these obstacles. So, do you believe that 60 days is sufficient for removing all the obstacles for Russian exports?
That's not something I can speak to because I think, as I said to James, we don't hold all the levers. What we do hold is the determination to get things moving, and we have, and we will continue to do so. Please, Errol.
Thank you. Just to clarify that statement that you, if I'm not wrong, 40% of the aid from 1 billion, it's already again for Turkey, and the 64 for Syria?
No, that's not what I said. I said I think 14%.
14%
for
so,
Turkey. And I would encourage
Syria?
you for Syria. Well, if you don't listen, how do you expect me to listen?
64, if I probably.
Syria, I will tell you what it was because it's actually said it. But I would remind all of you that all of the appeals are on the website, and you can look in real time.
Okay, but I wanted to ask actually how the distribution will go on and how it will go on.
Turkey is 14% and Syria is 64%. Syria was a lot
Turkey
lower.
Turkey is 4-0 or 1-4?
1-4.
Okay. 1.
But you look, okay. Please, Paulina.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good afternoon. I imagine you don't have any questions left. Let me start with the Black Sea Grain Initiative. The President of the General Assembly, Csaba Kőrösi, commends the efforts of the Secretary General and his team, together with Turkey, to secure the continuation of the Black Sea Grain Initiative. A collapse of this initiative would lead to great damage and suffering across the globe and must be avoided. President Kőrösi reiterates his call for dialogue and trust, for the parties to come together and overcome obstacles in extending the initiative for the good of the people. He commends the work of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, or UNCTAD, in facilitating the export of much-needed fertilizers to global markets. These initiatives have provided a vital lifeline to millions of people who have experienced great difficulties as a result of the global food security crisis triggered by the war in Ukraine. Give me just 1 second. In terms of the President's schedule, tomorrow, Wednesday, 15th of March, he will take part in a CEO roundtable discussion on a gender-equal future of work in the digital age, and this is being held on the sidelines of the 67th session of the Commission on the Status of Women. And a note about our PGA Youth Fellows. If you're interested in what they do on a day-to-day, follow them on Twitter. The handle is @PGA Youth Fellows. That's everything for me. Please.
Thank you, Paulina. My question is based on your initial statement about the GA's support, GA President's support of the grain deal. I was just wondering if you know if he has any views in terms of whether, we know it's 120 years is the standard, but given that Russia appears to want to go along with the 60-day, at least for the time being, does he agree with that? Would he object to an only 60-day extension, do you think?
I mean, the president is very much in support of extending the Black Sea Grain Initiative. I'm not going to go into details. I don't know whether he himself personally has any views, but I know this is very important for him, hence the statement he wants to lend his support. Thanks. Please.
Thank you, Paulina. On Syria question, are you aware of a tentative meeting being scheduled, on March 28th, member states to debate the creation of this special mechanism for Syrian families who've lost loved ones, they've been disappeared or detained in Syria?
I heard you ask Stefan that same question. I double-checked with the team, and right now there's nothing scheduled. Okay, let me check in the chat. I don't see anything. Oh, please, James.
Yeah, just we're coming towards the water conference. What's the President of the General Assembly's view on this conference? What is it actually going to achieve, or is it just a talk fest?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. You know, there's two really main outcomes out of this. Well, three, really, because one is going to be a summary that the President's office puts together. And then the two big outcomes that should come out of this is, one, is the water action agenda, and that's all the commitments that all of the member states are making. And I had already shared the link, I think, to that, and the commitments are already coming in. And then also, hopefully, agreement on these actual game changers. And so that's what the president has been doing for months now, since before the consultations in October. He's been knocking on doors, and he's been trying to get member states to come in and agree that this is what we need. We need an information center. We need to have a way of looking at how much water we actually have and verifying it and knowing what we're going to do with it. And so he thinks this is a great opportunity, really a great opportunity to actually do something different, to actually make an impact. But at the same time, you know, that's up to member states, really what comes out of this. But there will be a press conference here tomorrow, as Stefan announced, at 12:30. It will be with the two co-chairs, and hopefully they'll give you more information on it. Please.
Just a quick follow-up. For General Assembly meetings to be called, how far in advance do they have to be called? Like, can it be 2 days before?
That's a good question. I don't know what the minimum time frame is. I know that usually there's a lot of meetings going on, so it's a matter of kind of reshuffling. But I'll follow up and see what the minimum time frame is. All right. I don't think there's anyone else. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Policy and Rights today. I don't know how to impress this anymore, that we have to stop allowing it just to be a matter of government or corporate control. We can take control of our lives, and we can do things as a global community to fix the things that are wrong in our world. Please do find that subscribe button wherever it may be. This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.